Let's talk now, though, to Norman Brennan, former London police officer, a man who posts very often on X and on social media about the things that he sees, the views that he has, the times that he thinks Britain and London in particular has lost the plot. Norman, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Yeah, good morning, mate.
Thanks very much for joining us. I've got to start with Valdo Callocane, I think, because a review of Nottingham NHS Trust has come out and has basically revealed that there was a massive catalogue of failure, leaving this man, a dangerous schizophrenic, walking the streets of Nottingham, where one psychiatrist predicted he would kill someone. The families are absolutely devastated. Even his own family is the subject of a BBC documentary that went out last night. But the families are saying the NHS have got blood on their hands. And I mean, from the policing perspective, what are the police supposed to do if people like this are allowed to wander the streets?
Well, that's exactly the point, Mike. Pretty much like I was saying yesterday, there are certain people that will go on the streets or carry a knife, for example, may even self-radicalise, for example, overnight, where the police have got absolutely not a clue, including the victim. And they go out and they can commit whatever crime they want, and before anybody knows what's going on, they're actually killing someone or seriously injuring them. Yeah. But in this particular case, Mike, how many times have we heard the National Health Service or whoever they are, local social services, say that lessons must be learned? No. Well, it's clear there's not. I recall even when I was in the police service that there were tens of thousands of people released into the community. It was called care in the community. Yes. Tens of thousands of hospital beds were closed. And people like myself that was on a robbery squad, we deal with people, and quite often it was somebody with mental health issues that was out of control. Now, often people are told to self-medicate. Well, when they don't self-medicate, and it may well be the case here from what I understand, then suddenly, from being quite rational, quite calm, quite normal, and going about their day-to-day work under medication, they suddenly turn into a walking time bomb. And those that say that the assault on the police, if only we'd nicked him, the assault on one of his fellow workers, if only we'd nicked him, you and I know, Mike, that he would never have been sent to prison for that type of assault. So let's push that aside, and it really is down to the National Health Service. And what are they going to do about it? Or is it just going to be lessons must be learned until the next time?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there's a pretty good breakdown of the report in the papers this morning. The Sun's got a pretty good one here, catalogue of failure. He was released and discharged back into the community like 4 times, right? And in each of those times, when he was released, he carried out another crime, you know, which could have been an alleged assault on a cop. It could have been trying to break into somebody's house, threatening a woman who was so frightened that she jumped out of a window. I mean, you know, he had 7 different risk assessments, right? One of which, as I say, ended. You can see a picture of him trying to climb in. This was just before the terrible events of that day in Nottingham, where 3 people ended up dead, trying to break into a house. I think it was a migrant centre or something he was trying to break into, or an old people's home. He was literally, as you say, an accident, a murder waiting to happen. And yet, every time he was released, he committed another crime, and every time he was taken in, he was let go again.
Yeah, I was speaking to a senior police officer yesterday who's just retired not long ago from Nottinghamshire Police Service, and we were discussing this particular case along with other issues. It's fortuitous that we haven't got 8 or 10 people that have been murdered, because the police will get a phone call from probably a witness that has seen somebody stabbed or run down, for example. So that then goes out to the patrol cars. Well, the patrol car might be 5 or 6 miles away, the nearest one, and then once the second call comes through, then more and more vehicles will be sent to the scene. And you and I know that it doesn't take long to stab somebody to death or run them over. Now, we can't just keep releasing people into the community. I think that they should not be released. And I think, you know, we should start looking about the safety of society, Mike, rather than saving money. Because if saving money is the most pertinent and important point, then what value do we put on the safety of society? And this is just yet another case where somebody's been released into the community, people are umming and ahhing and even have concerns, but they let him trot along on his way and cross their fingers and hope that something doesn't happen. Well, here we are talking about 3 devastated families who, for them, Mike, time has stopped and life would change forever. And while we move on, believe you me, I'd help pick up the devastation. The bereftness will be something you and I could only dream of in our worst nightmares.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, you know, Keir Starmer talks a lot about making the streets safe and, you know, locking people up who have been involved in riots and dangerous behaviour and all of that, and I'm sure we all applaud that. However, you know, it's a kind of ironic thing that he says he wants to make the streets safe, because the fact is the streets of Britain have become very unsafe in the last several years. You know, so much so, I know you talk about it an awful lot on your Twitter account. You know, we had a stabbing yesterday in the middle of central London in Leicester Square. A man's been charged now with the attempted murder of a woman, 34-year-old woman, and an 11-year-old girl. There was a boy stabbed in Manchester. You know, the police had to shoot somebody the other day in Surrey. You know, there's violence everywhere you look.
There was a double stabbing in High Wycombe yesterday. Yeah. A man and a woman was stabbed. Early hours of Sunday morning, a quadruple stabbing at 3 a.m. in the morning in Forest Gate. Last week in Tower Hamlets, within 24 hours, one man was shot to death, another man was stabbed to death. And I've reported over, I think, the last 2 or 3 months, something like 15 double or triple stabbings and shootings. And even in Bromley, about 3 or 4 months ago, 3 car loads turned up and they attacked a 17-year-old. He was both shot and stabbed and fought for life. And we have no solutions. And I've been discussing this, as you all know, Mike, for decades. Right. Even when I was a serving police officer, I went to number 10 Downing Street with families who'd been bereaved by stabbings in London. And here we are, 20, 30 years on, there is absolutely nothing put in place. And unless we have mandatory sentences, and let's cut to the chase, Mike, if we actually did to those that carry knives and use knives what we're doing to the rioters, nicked in front of the court, go to prison, believe you me, there will be hundreds of families, particularly mothers and fathers, that can then spend time planning futures for their children rather than funerals. But here we are, the circle goes round. Until that circle's broken, I'm afraid these knifings and knife attacks, and sadly, random knife attacks like yesterday on an 11-year-old girl will continue. And what does it take for this government, and even the last government, to wake up, smell the coffee and realise the streets of Britain are lost? Policing is broken, the criminal justice system is in absolute disarray, and start putting the priority and safety of its British citizens as a priority. And as a leading law and order expert, I'm afraid it's far, far down the league. It's nowhere near the top.
And is it simply about stop and search, or are there other measures that the government could bring in?
Well, it's not just about stop and search. I mean, it's mandatory sentencing. As I said, we should really be sending people to prison for 5 years. If you're a juvenile, 3 years. If you're 3 times more likely to be stabbed to death than shot to death. Yeah. Yet if you carry a firearm, it's a minimum of 5 years. We also need a mass education program. We can't do mass stop and search because we don't have the police. It's gone down from 1.5 million 6 years ago to 500,000 last year stop and searches. And the police, particularly in the Met, said, no, I'm not interested in stop and searching. I don't want to complain. I don't want my career and my life and my family's life to be destroyed. I prefer to give it a swerve and left unless I have to. Mass education program, mentors. We need to get into prisons. We need to make sure that young offenders institutes give somebody sort of apprenticeships that when they come out, they got more than half a chance of success in. The trouble is, the problem is so big, Mike, that people just shy away. It's a bit like going to a press conference with your press release, reading it out, the Home Secretary, and as you walk out the room, slip it into the bin until next time when somebody else will type another one up for you.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just one final thing to mention to you. 3 police officers in Thames Valley, you might have seen this story, won a discrimination claim after an employment judge ruled they were passed over for promotion because they were white.
It's gone on for decades. My own DS, when I was in a robbery squad, was one of the most outstanding detective sergeants in my force. And I saw, in particular in his case, 2 or 3 women and others that were promoted above him to fit the diversity target. So they were promoted over and above someone that was far more qualified, far better than what they were. Fortunately, did go on to make a commander, but that was 20, 25 years ago. And I think that we're more interested in nowadays in ticking boxes, hitting diversity targets, than ensuring that the right person, be they black or white, male or female, is put in that right position for the right reasons. And that is one of the reasons why some people within the police service think we've gone woke, weary, and senior police officers are more interested in going to their colleges and learning the babble that they learn. They're detached from the public, they're detached from victims, they're detached from their frontline officers, and I'm afraid, and it's I'm a sorry state of affairs, we've got some of the worst leaders in police leadership I've seen in 45 years of policing and law and order. And until they change, I'm afraid it won't parameter down the ranks where we've got leaders that can lead, have vision, have passion, direction, and police and run police forces without fear or favour.
Absolutely. Norman, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for all the stuff that you do. Norman Brennan, a former London police officer, talking an awful lot of sense and talking tragically about the state of our nation and the state of the streets of our nation and the safety on those streets.